Hello everyone and welcome to Derail Valley, the only train game to have the opposite of driving a train in its name and a random golf ball at the steel mill. Today's video will be a tutorial on finding and recovering and restoring the demonstrator locomotives, as well as driving the utility rail vehicle that is in a shed somewhere. So let's get started. This is what Demonstrator would look like. This is an S282 or the big steam engine, and this is it in its demonstrator state. They're often hidden around bushes or walls. This one is at the coal power plant. The coal power plant has the most places where Demonstrator could spawn, and if I kept looking around for a little longer, there might be another Demonstrator sat around here. Demonstrators are procedurally generated when you start the world and never move, so if you can't recover a demonstrator right then, just make a note of it and it will stay in the exact same place. This is, as I said, an S282 or the big steel engine, and this is what it looks like normally. That is the normal livery of the S282, and that is its demonstrator look. The first thing to do when you get a demonstrator is you need to re-rail it. This can be done with your re-rail tool, and they normally spawn near cracks such as this. Most demonstrators will only do one part, but of course the S282 has its tender as well as its main engine. So now we've got that, what you would do is you would take it down to City South down here. I will just teleport down here. Once spawning, ignore the strange and definitely not my fault amount of broken trains all over the place. Definitely not my fault. Anyway, so you bring the locomotives here and you bring them over to the museum around here. Again, definitely not my fault. Peace and quiet at last. So, this is the museum, and its default look will be like this. You can only use the museum once you have got the museum license for $1,500 money, whatever. Once you get it, you can go in, light switches here, and we'll get some light, and there's a massive turntable in the middle. This turntable can be controlled either using this man handle, whatever you call that, this, or using the page up and page down keys. You'd bring the demonstrator here, and each of these back bays here would have its own label around here for what demonstrator goes where. I believe this one with the door is the S060, and that's the only one I can remember. So we got the S282, let's just shove it somewhere. Now really you would bring it in, I'm just going to spawn it out of nowhere for demonstration purposes. And then it would look something like that. So you'd bring it in, and this is how it would look. Then you would go to museum office over here, and you would have a cost here of parts. You need to buy parts, And I believe that to use parts, to get the parts, you have to go up to the machine factory up here and go to the loading bay where the big crane is and load it onto one of two vehicles, which I will show in a second. And then you would have to bring it back down to City South, and I think you use the loading bay at City South, which is somewhere over there, I think. You'd use the loading bay at City South, and then you would come back to the museum office. I believe it's 10,000 for each locomotive, but I might be wrong, it might change with each locomotive. You pay that and the parts get instantly installed. Then once they get installed, there's your final mandatory job will be to take all of this and to move it so it'll be at 0% damage. So it'll be at 0% damage. I'm just going to do sandbox teleportation, and you would move it using another locomotive over to here. Same with the tender. It's a job that the BE2 micro shunt is quite good at. It's the one that I will be using. And there you go. Now you would of course have to repair all of this. We do all of that. That's all for the steam engine. That's all for the tender. Go to the steam engine. Have to do even more of this. And then you can see it adds up to quite the repair bill. To do that steam locomotive all the way to full. And this isn't including water or coal, which with steam locomotives you have to do manually. So doing all that, almost 100,000. And that's not even including, as I said, the coal and water. So to make this a bit quicker, I'll just take the tender over. Tip for sandbox mode, you can just derail and then re-rail locomotive to move it about however you wish. And then that's in the coaling area, and you would the tender's full, but you would have to fill that up, big bill, and then move it over to the water area over here, I think. Right, where's the water? There, yes. So move it over to the water area over there, and you would fill up with water. And then at this point it is almost finished and you can use it in its clean state. However, if you want it to look pretty, which I'm assuming most people would want to, you need to paint it. So the first step to painting it is you would buy sand. I think it's available at every shop and it's not that much money. And it would go to look something like this. Interior also, so for example for the S282 you would need 3 sand cans, one for the tender, one for the train exterior, and one for the locomotive interior. And then you can paint them. You can paint them all individually, and there's 2 options to choose. You could just leave it like this. There's 2 proper paint options to choose from. DVRT1U, which is its default layout, but painted and not rusty and rubbish. Or Demo1U. So Demo1U on the S282 looks like this. And DVRT1U on the S282 looks like this. You can see same paint job, just a new coat of paint. And those are your 4 options for each locomotive. You can mix them up, so you can have demo on the tender, or just leave it primer on the cab if you wanted. So now you have a white cab with a black body with a blue tender, for whatever reason you might want. And then you can just decide on how that looks and how you want it to look, and then you can go. However, the DVRT1U, so what the engine's got right now, locomotive, it is available in every single shop, and I think it's 1,500 if I'm not mistaken, something along those lines. And you will need 3 cans to paint the whole S282, or 2 cans to paint any other locomotive, because of exterior, interior, and S282 has a tender. Demonstrator paint, however, can only be bought in one shop, and I can't remember which one that is. I believe it's about 5,000 per can. And then, of course, a one-time purchase is the paint sprayer, which you load the paint cans into and spray it onto your locomotive. And that is how you actually get paint onto it in career mode. If you want to change the paint, you will have to put it back to primer before you repaint it, let's say with demo on that and DVRT on that. You cannot get the normal Derail Valley livery with all the rust on it, where it looks aged. The DVRT old, such as this, you can't get this livery on any of these demonstrator locomotives. That's just blocked. If you paint a demonstrator locomotive or sand it down, you cannot get the old demonstrator look. So you can't get that look again if you get rid of it. If you sand it down, you can't get that look again. A couple more notes for the demonstrators. They are private locomotives, which means they will not appear in the fees for the locomotives. They might do, but you can't clear them from the fee manager. The only way to clear it is to come over here and I'll go to any of the manual services and fill it up. It's the only way to do it. And it is a private locomotive yet again, so that means any gadget, these will never despawn, and they can be requested as a work tray. So in career you'll have an option on your multi-tool, com, radio, whatever. That's work trains, that's where you spawn your handcart, your caboose, your V2, that stuff. You'll also be able to spawn the two parts vehicles that I'll show in a second, and any of your demonstrator locomotives. And the slug. These demonstrator locomotives, however, if you put gadgets in them, they will never despawn. From the regular locomotives, if you put gadgets in them, you don't use the locomotive for about 2 real life hours in game, 2 real life hours while you're playing, then the train will despawn and all the gadgets will get moved to your lost property tool shed area. These will always stay where they are in the exact same condition that they are until you manually change it. So now that those are done, wait till the end of the video if you want a full both DVRT and demo paint job of every single locomotive, and I'll do that at the end. But the next thing that I'm going to mention is 2 ways of moving around the parts. So this is the DM1U, or the Diesel Mechanical 1 utility. So one powered axle, front axle powered. It's a diesel mechanical like the DM3, and it is one way. It can haul one part on its flat bed at a time. It also has couplers on both sides, just like any others, but it does not support MU connections. Again, this is a private vehicle, same rules apply, can't do it through fee manager, won't despawn, and you can use it as a work train. And next thing is the utility short flat car. The utility short flat car is exact same as the back of that. One part at a time, held in here, you're good to go. Handbrakes up here, and the emergency cylinder brake release is right. They not add one for this. If you know where that cylinder release valve is, then please tell me in the comments below. Now, that is one way you tow that behind the locomotive, it's a normal carriage. Or this locomotive here. This is now the segment where I'll be teaching you how to drive the DM1U. At the end of the video, as I said before, there will be a line of all locomotives, and I will show all paint jobs for that. So the fuel cut-off and the brake release are both at the bottom here on the right hand side. You get in, these are the controls, it's single gearboxed, and here you can turn both of your buttons on, it starts complaining about the brake pipe. And then here's your handbrake, make sure that's on. And you can just use the starter like any other locomotive. You come under here, here's your brake cut off, remember to turn that on before you run the locomotive. I don't believe there is a bell on this locomotive. Not sure though, I don't think there is. It does have a modelled interior, with this just being a window room, a sofa that you can't sit down on, as well as very good looking doors. So, how do you actually run this locomotive? First, if we release the handbrake, brakes are off. Normally you'd wait for that to get up to about 5 bar, but in sandbox doesn't matter. You set your reverser, here is your throttle. However, this gearbox does have a neutral, so it can be pushed and pulled around without changing the engine RPM as far as I'm aware. So DM3 for example cannot get pushed or pulled around, doesn't have a neutral. Even with the reverser in neutral, it will, any spin on the wheels will affect the engine RPM. This you can put it in neutral and it doesn't care what happens to it. Engine RPM will stay the same. But if we put this in gearbox number 1, that's off, wheeling forwards, gauge some throttle, some normal things. I'm going to be using keyboard shortcuts for this. Same as the DM3. If you move it with the throttle engaged, you get expensive noises. Now similar to the DM3. You let your RPM get a bit high. I don't think it likes it. Does it not explode? I want it to explode. Oh, explode. I thought it exploded. Maybe it's just doing damage to the gearbox. No, who knows? Mind me. That's better. Okay. So that was how to drive the DM1U. Its brakes, its train brake is self-lapping, I believe, which means, just check that. Yes, its train brake is self-lapping, which means you set it and the train brake will go to that level. Unlike the DM3 and the S282 and the S060, which have 4 positions: release, hold, apply and emergency apply. This also doesn't have an independent brake or a dynamic brake. Its dynamic brake is pretty much put the engine down and carefully lower its gearbox, and just like a manual car it will slow itself down. Or its handbrake is its independent brake pretty much. Anyway, there are one last thing I want to mention before I show you the big horde of engines, and that is a couple of vehicles also have a Demonstrator Paint job, but do not have a demonstrator that you can find in the world, such as the micro shunter. This has, again, you need to put it to primer, and then it has DVRT-NU as normal and Demo-NU, same as the Demonstrator locomotives. The DM1U also has DVRT-NU and Demo-NU, and of course its normal primer. I can't remember if the Slug has one. Is there any others we missed? Handcar doesn't have one. I think it's only the Slug left. Yeah. I think the Slug can be. Yeah, it can go to primer, it can go to its DVRT and its Demo-NU, which will match the Demo DE6. This car here, I don't think it has a. It does have a DVRT-NU, and that will also mean it has a primer. Yes. This car is also paintable. I believe that's it for paintable stuff that isn't a demo, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, that's all the stuff. And both that carriage and the DM1U can get spawned in remotely as a work train at the cost of money, just like the B2. The B2, this is what its demonstrator inside looks like. Okay, so now I will clear this and I will jump back in when I have set up all of my stuff. So these are the locomotives with either their old demo looks that you'll rarely find them in the game, or if they do not have demonstrators that you'll find in the game, just their default looks, such as the car, the DM1U and the BE2. The tender of the S282 and the S282 itself have been split like this, and I'll quickly go around each locomotive. I won't show them with their prime look since they all look the same, pretty grey with some darker and lighter patches in. However, next will be their DVRT-NU look, so these are the cheap paint cans. This is them with their DVRT-NU looks. Every single engine here is paintable with the DVRT paint cans. Yet again, I will go around them all, as well as their insides this time. Okay, and finally now with the Demonstrator Paint looks. These are the more expensive paint cans. All of the engines here have Demonstrator Paint except the utility flat car over there. But yet again, this is look around them and their caps. So, but can't stop noticing the Thomas the Tank on this S282. Why did the devs do it that way? But it looks cool, so I'm not complaining. Again, the DE6 demonstrator has the same pattern as the slug demonstrator, so they will join in with each other. And that is every single one of the liveries an engine can have except the primer, because they're all about what you would expect. White. Boring white. Anyway. So this is the end of the video. And quick note at the end, there are only 6 demonstrator locomotives scattered around the world, one of each type of locomotive. That's 6, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. That's one of each type of locomotive. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you want to correct anything, put them in the comments. And unless I've forgot anything, if I have forgot anything, then I'll put it on the screen right about now. But if I haven't forgot anything, then this will be the end of this video. I'll see you in another Derail Valley video, in which I will start my first season of YouTube Derail Valley. See you later.